Welcome to the New Automation Mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. Successful automation is much more than technology, it's a mindset. On this podcast, we're here to learn about this mindset from innovative leaders who actually practice it every single day. I'm your host, Marcus Zern, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with you. Today's episode is special. It's a live recording featuring questions from a studio audience. It was hosted by Nasdaq at their Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. In this episode, you will hear from a panel of three guests. First, Harish Surendranath, the head of AI and ML technology partnerships at Amazon Web Services. We have Dr. Jia Li, a former Stanford AI professor and founding head of Google's research and development arm for cloud AI, and she now leads a startup called LiveX.ai. And last but not least, Jeff Thomas, executive vice president at Nasdaq and the chairman of the board of Nasdaq's Entrepreneurial Center. Let's dive right in. Welcome everyone on this rainy night here. Thanks for making the trip out here. So you heard it. We have actually a really cool panel tonight. Harish runs the technology partnerships at AWS, all the important stuff, right? AI, ML, automation, IoT, high-performance computing as well. We'll get to that later. And then maybe a little bit of his past. He actually spent a long time at Dassault in the CAT space, mechanical engineering background, and I think that's what got you into HPC, right? The high-performance computing.
That's right. Yep.
So that's cool. Now, Jia, I mean, you heard LiveX, right? But that's actually just like the last part of the journey. Ran like, 20-odd product lines at Google on the AI side, head of research at Snapchat, professor at Stanford doing AI research in medicine. What else do we have? Yahoo Labs. Going into image recognition and so on. So I think if anyone has done AI, I mean, it's her. And then last but not least, Jeff, first of all, thank you for being our gracious host here at the Nasdaq Center. And what's cool about Jeff is also he can talk about how Nasdaq is now using Workato, because they're actually a fairly recent new customer addition. So we'll go into what they do with Workato, and then he also runs multiple products. Maybe some people mostly know Nasdaq obviously for trading, but there's a lot of financial products and services and software that you guys offer. So excited about that. All right, so you guys have seen the book, right? The New Automation Mindset. Who's read it? Very nice, very nice. For the ones who have not read it, I'll give you the 3-sentence kind of summary, cliff notes. So it really talks about 3 things that matter to this new automation mindset. The growth mindset, just being open to new stuff. In a way, not trying to just automate tasks that we already know it, but also being open and to maybe re-engineering, redesigning, trying a new way. Process mindset, it's important. I mean, automation is you automate business processes. And then what Workato really was all about is the scale mindset, which is basically it's not gonna work if only 3 people in a company will do it. It's like you got to get more people involved. Importantly, also shouldn't be all IT people. Should be a good mix of IT and business people, and then I think you get things going. So I wanted to use these 3 mindsets almost as a little compass to guide the conversation today. And so I thought we'll start with the growth mindset, of course. It's something cool, something interesting. So Jia, we talked, when was it, Friday, right? You just came back from CES, and we had a cool conversation of what you saw there, and what I heard about. I wasn't there. But tell us about the rabbit.
Totally. I thought everybody probably in the last year have already got familiar with generative AI through ChatGPT and Midjourney, all these cool tools, softwares. And this CES was my first CES, but the really exciting CES show because AI is literally everywhere. And from companies, traditional companies like Samsung, LG, and car companies, etc., they are innovating on their existing hardware. And two new companies like Rabbit R1, people have probably have heard about it, AI native hardware, leveraging generative AI to interact with the users. Everybody is very, very excited about how AI will fundamentally change how we interact with the hardware. But this year, really, we see a lot of interesting experiment to navigate how that is either changing the experience of existing hardware, like how you interact, how your refrigerator or TV is going to get smarter, or new form factor of new AI native hardware. I believe the innovation will continue to go on. And especially if we think of the two most prominent advantages of generative AI. One is it literally can help you to naturally interact with the user in an intelligent human way, right? And the second, when there is siloed information or tedious functions that is embedded somewhere, of course, it's going to help you connect the dots. So that becomes the basis that many of the hardware companies are thinking about. Hey, like we want to be the next generation of AI native hardware smart device as well. So we'll see more coming in our way, and that's just the beginning of the innovation in hardware.
Who has heard of the Rabbit device? Some people have. It's actually, it is really cool. We talked with Jeff this morning. He said, hey, Marcus, there's one more. There's the AI pin, Humane. And then I heard Johnny Ive is on to something with OpenAI together. So, I think the last year has changed a lot for us. Who knows? Maybe now it's going to change like how we work with our mobile phones, which we already tethered to like the most of the day. It's going to be very, very interesting. I think it's almost like a signal that shows you like what's possible. I talked to a consultant this morning, and he showed that scenario where he said, like, look, imagine, you move to a new house, and basically there's your expert assistant, and you feed all the manuals, whatever dishwasher you have, what your heating system is, anything there. And basically, if something breaks, all you do is take a photo, and it'll go and call the plumber and just take care of that. It just knows everything. I think you guys with LifeX, you want to talk about LifeX a little bit? Because it's a little bit what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah, thank you. So essentially, if we hope generative AI can help elevating our everyday life. So that's LifeX AI, so living experience multiplied by AI. So we want to be the AI hub that can help empower our everyday life. So right now you've seen AI that can generate slides for you, can help you coding for you, but we actually have a lot of things outside of work, at home, right? So how we can fully leverage the appliances, the devices at home. When there is a question to use it, there is a copilot that is super knowledgeable and that is super connected, right? So that's essentially, we hope to help the homeowners, to the consumers, that they can interact with hardware, interact with every aspect of the devices at home. And when there is any problems, you can help find the service that is needed immediately to fix it, right? So we often talk about why multimodality is important, right? So Marcus and Harish, we discussed it a little earlier about it. At home, there are a lot of things that it's hard to describe using language, right? So be it a button on your refrigerator, or some of the screw in some of your device. That's where I believe, or using multimodality understanding as well as action agent-based models that will change how people interact with our mobile, interact with our devices, interact with everything at home.
And I can tell you, I mean, these are consumer examples because it's easy to understand, but I can tell you I'm working with a chief digital officer from a wholesale distribution company. They sell to electrical contractors. And he was very much just as excited of this Rabbit device as I was, because he said, like, look, if these electrical contractors had this device, I would teach it, how to order by taking a photo of the part I need to order, and that'll just make it so much easier. I think there's a lot of, I believe there's just a lot of new things we have to learn. In fact, maybe to the whole group. Obviously, Workato is in automation, the new automation mindset. Automation in the past, I think even if you look in the dictionary, I think it's almost defined as kind of automation in the sense of a robot. It basically takes high volume, low complexity tasks that a machine can do. Now that we have AI or generative AI, it almost feels like we might have to change our mental model. It almost feels like, oh, wow, now maybe it's more the lower volume, high complexity stuff that might need some supervision, but it'll actually surprise you what it can contribute. So you have to rethink. It's not the dumb robots anymore. It's actually like the digital brains. I don't know if you guys have any maybe Harish, maybe in the use cases that you see at AWS, what kind of things do you see happening out there?
Yeah, so largely we see 3 types of use cases. First is essentially use cases around customer experience. So, for example, voice chatbots or intelligent conversation assistants, personalized sort of recommendations for customers, and so on. So that's the customer experience related. And then we see sort of the productivity and creativity for employees. So that's, for example, for creativity, it could be something like, marketing content creation. And for productivity, it's usually a lot of coding assistants that help people write better code or interpret code and things like that. And then the third use case is really around improving the efficiency of business processes. So it could be intelligent document processing and several other back office automations that you can do more sort of intelligently, more in an automated fashion using generative AI. So those are the horizontal use cases that we are seeing across different industries. But then there are also very vertical focused use cases. For example, protein folding is an example that has had a big impact on drug discovery. Right? So drug discovery is a very vertical specific use case that's getting a lot of adoption thanks to generative AI.
That's
and
cool.
You can see that vertical specific applications in every vertical. This is just one example.
Okay, very interesting. Do you see any, if you think about think 2023, we were all thrown into the Gen AI craze.
Yeah.
Like, what do you predict for 2024? What will be different? Do you see anything there? Like, what does AWS think?
So in general, I think we are seeing customers move from proof of concepts to production use cases in general. And I think 2024, we'll see customers really evaluating the ROI of certain workloads and kind of focusing on the ones where they can get ROI. Going into 2024, that's what we expect.
Mm-hmm. Cool, very good. Now, Jeff, I know I mentioned you guys became Workato a customer recently. I think we're taking a step back. We talked a lot about AI, but it's AI and automation. What are you guys doing with it? Some of it is not AI related, but I think there's a couple of automation plus AI use cases also, right?
That's right. So, we do have a number of different use cases internally. So, as mentioned before, we're not just an exchange, right? Everybody knows this is the home for the most innovative companies in the world, but we're actually a scaled financial technology provider to the market. So our software runs exchanges around the globe. We have software that helps to root out rogue traders. We have software that helps banks detect money laundering and fraud. So we really do have a lot of different software applications that we sell into corporates, banks, investors. And so when we think about how do we do that efficiently, obviously a lot of that starts with our CRM system, being able to make sure that we have all the right data about our clients. We're also a highly acquisitive company, so we've done a number of large acquisitions over the years, and so all of our internal systems aren't perfectly integrated just yet. And so that is one of the initial use cases for Workato, is really kind of trying to help get the data out of those silos and put it into central repositories like our CRM. So that's some of the easier things to kind of stand up and get working through. I think some of the cooler use cases we're starting to now work on as a proof of concept actually does mix in some of the generative AI capabilities. So one very specific use case at Nasdaq. So every morning and every evening we ring the bell. So we have the opening bell and the closing bell. And it's the team's job to make sure they write a really interesting and compelling speech for every company that's coming in. And then you want to gather all of the background information about the company or the organization, whoever's coming in to ring the bell. And believe it or not, we actually have people that spend an awful lot of time on that. And so one of the things we're just trialing out, I saw a demo of it the other day, but with Workato, we're able to go in and automate that kind of prep doc process and speech writing process where we can go in, gather all the information out of our internal systems, our CRM and other tools to kind of make sure we understand what's our relationship with this customer. We can then go onto the public internet and grab their bio, their picture, and then go out and gather some cool news articles, and then use generative AI to actually stitch that all together using some of our kind of scripts and structures to build a cool speech. And would still take some human oversight, tweaking. We obviously want to make sure we don't say anything that's factually incorrect, but it's one of those kind of, I'd say, kind of lower volume, higher order tasks that you wouldn't immediately think of as something that's ripe for automation, but we're really excited to trial that.
Okay. Now this is really cool. So the first step is basically, what I would feel, you're putting in Salesforce and you're connecting it to all the things. So bread and butter automation, and then on top of that, you're putting interesting kind of AI plus automation use cases, which kind of gets me to the thought. I'd be curious. I mean, even like panel and even folks from the audience. I'm thinking about, so we talked about 2024 and what's ahead of us. We kind of got a little, dipped our toes in the water with AI. The last 10 years, maybe even 15 years, was all this digital transformation wave. I wonder, and it kind of started with Amazon, really. I mean, Amazon was the first really really online retailer, and I talk about how this kind of created an oh shit kind of moment for a lot of other people who were like, well, if we don't keep up, we're lost. And I think that the people who didn't do it for a while, at last when COVID came, I think they got the message. And we're like, yeah, we've got to do something. It feels to me like with AI, So talk about the digital transformation wave. It feels like we have a new wave that's in the beginning. I mean, it's not at the top yet, but it's kind of in the beginning. It's forming. It's almost like the next wave after the digital transformation wave. It's that AI transformation wave where I would say that Google was maybe when ChatGPT came out, were the first to had that oh shit moment. BPOs around the world, I think they're realizing, oh, I think there's a danger for our business model here, and I think the question is like, who will be next? So I don't know what you guys think. Maybe do you feel like how serious is that? What's happening here right now?
Yeah, totally. I felt generative AI, this wave, unlike the past, AI waves or tech waves. It's a little different because it is coming to every aspect of our life, right? So there are so many applications that you can leverage generative AI on. I think Harish and Jeff both shared some really good examples. In the past, we had, AlphaGo, self-driving, right? Those are in a narrow application that computers, when the rules are specified, of course, right? It can do much better than human in, for example, Go game. And similarly, self-driving car is one use case, right? One application. But generative AI, because of the vast amount of potential applications, it's really creating a new wave or a new opportunity that people can innovate on top of that. Think of transformer-based approaches or foundation models. Essentially, it's taking the entire internet information and condense it to a large language model or foundation model, right? So many of the knowledge is already encoded in it. And if you have the right way to probe it, right, to prompt it or probe it, then it can generate a lot of different inspiration. It could be interdisciplinary, et cetera, et cetera. I think this kind of innovation, we haven't, even in the AI field, we haven't had the opportunity to build on top of it. And now the barrier is lower so that not everyone needs a machine learning degree to innovate based on AI applications. So that makes it even more interesting that domain experts, vertical applications that even like hardware, software, we will see a lot more innovation based on it.
Just from my own personal experience, I talk to a lot of different partners, customers on a daily basis, and it's very hard for me to remember any conversation where generative AI has not come up in the last 6 months. It's almost like if the conversation goes 10 minutes and we haven't talked generative AI, it feels like there's something wrong. So the excitement is also very palpable for customers. They want to try things out quickly and decide where to invest. So to your point, this definitely feels like this is here to stay. Clearly, there is some experimentation that's going on with customers, with partners as to what are the use cases that they should be using generative AI for, but it certainly seems transformative.
Yeah, I think we kind of think about generative AI in two ways at Nasdaq. One, we think about how we can integrate it in our products, and then the second area is how we can use it on our business. And so when we think about generative AI in the products, it's how can we change the user experience? How can we change the productivity gains that our customers get out of our products and solutions? And so one example there is in our fraud and anti-money laundering business. There's a lot of manual work that analysts have to go through to do regular reporting on that. And honestly, one of the top tools those analysts use is to go out and Google information and fill out a form that you have to submit into the regulator. And so those are some things where all of a sudden you can automate that using generative AI. And that's where we kind of get back to that. What is that return? Well, if you can have fewer analysts or more accurate reports, that's really good. And then when we think about using generative AI on our business, it's some of the use cases like automating some of those rote mechanical tasks that our team is doing. And I think obviously there's a lot of great use cases there around software development, contact centers, a lot of the things that folks have already kind of put into practice. And I think that's going to be one of the big areas that we'll see a lot of pressure this year. I think last year there was probably a lot of budget out there to go out and experiment and see what's possible. And this year I think it's going to be, okay, now what kind of a return can we get on those experiments and those investments that we can make sure it's really making sense to leverage the technology in those use cases.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can just tell you, I mean, you guys probably get my accent. So I grew up in Germany. And whenever I get there and talk to customers, typically I get frustrated because Germans, I mean, they're kind of the last ones to adopt something. It's they're kind of very conservative and take their time to evaluate and so on. With AI and Gen AI, it was a different experience. I mean, people were really on it. I mean, boards and CIOs and so on, I think they would now engage and be very inquisitive, a lot more than I've ever seen. So I feel there is something there. People will go like, okay, this is, we gotta take this seriously. Well, let's, so we went through, you talked growth mindset, right? We went a little bit into process mindset and what are the use cases and so on. I do want to spend some time on the scale mindset. And the scale mindset to us at Workato, as I said, is kind of about democratization. It's kind of getting more people involved. We talked with Gia, and you worked at Google. I think part of your work at Google was, I think you were advancing AI and you were democratizing AI. Talk to us about that. What did you guys work on?
Yeah, I felt at my role when I was leading Google Cloud AI's product and development, essentially we want to lower the barrier for everyone who can build and apply AI at that time. But honestly, I felt Gen AI gives even more opportunity that for more people to get involved. Marcus, you mentioned about how big companies are looking into it, right? So Accenture had a report that over 90% of the executives in big companies are looking, Fortune 500 companies are looking into Gen AI application. And there are actually also large amount of small and medium companies. And at the beginning of AI, traditional AI, they couldn't benefit much from it because oftentimes either you need an engineer or IT service in order to leverage that, right? But right now, given the low barrier to entry for generative AI product, think of there is a mom and pop shop who are serving their customers and they really want to focus on their business. And in the past, they probably need to spend a lot of time on customer support and sales effort, et cetera, But now generative AI can actually automate much of this experience that the repetitive aspects can be reduced and the business owners or the small team can serve their customers much better. So I see that's the true democratization that is from the big companies to the small and medium companies to consumers. And it's essentially AI for everywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels to me like back in the days, AI, ML, kind of needed a data science team. There were, people who were into statistics and they were highly mathematical and only the largest companies could afford that. And when I saw my 15-year-old son type in like the homework in biology, like write about this and it came out in seconds, and we both looked at each other and we said, like, you can never submit that because nobody's going to believe you. It felt to me like, yeah, I mean, the barrier is lowered. I mean, to like almost nothing. You know, we worked with AWS, by the way, back in the days that you guys had this initiative, I think it was called IDA, AI for data analysts. So try getting like AI from the data scientist to the data analyst.
That's right.
And I feel like if you have something like Workato, where you also making things easier on the process side, and then you have the barrier lowered on the AI side, I think there is, it probably will. Yeah, I mean, it's explanation enough why the wave is forming, I think, a big wave.
Yeah, just to touch upon some of the things that you asked about scale. And you know what, I think Amazon AWS customers, there are a few different things that they look for. And Amazon is doing a few things to address those, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So one, going back to the ROI conversation, we feel like the infrastructure cost can come down. So Amazon is investing in its own sort of like custom silicon to make sure that it's like, customers can get better price performance than what we have available today. So that's going to be an ongoing work. And then there is no single foundation model that can address all the different use cases that we see across the board. So there are many use cases, and you need different types of models for solving each of them, for the best results, best accuracy, best latency, best performance, right? So there's a choice of models that we look to provide for customers. And then most importantly, I think that your data is the differentiator. So, foundation models, anyone can get them. So what's the differentiation that you have compared to your competitor? It's your data. So you want to use your data in your own sort of like, settings with security and privacy concerns, all of them addressed, in a way that you bring models to your data. So these are some core things that we think is going to continue to be constants in what customers would want to see from technology providers, and we are doing things to address all of that through Amazon products.
And it seems to me like also, I mean, you started off with high performance computing, right? Back in the CAD days, Dassault, I mean, it was niche. I mean, right. There wasn't like much, and it's like these highly parallelized compute models and so on, and architectures, hardware. Very few people did it. It seems now, I mean, if the Gen AI wave is coming and you have to train up your models and so on, it seems like it's going mainstream, huh?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it. So, high-performance computing was pretty niche. It was used for a lot of what's called simulation. So, if you think of automotive companies, they have to, achieve certain sort of occupant safety for car crashes, right? So they got to either build a car, test that out in a lab, make modifications, and that's very pricey, very time-consuming. So what they used to do was like leverage these simulation tools and run these simulations on high-performance computing clusters. Those are servers that are connected by high-speed, low-latency interconnects and specific file systems, very specific niche infrastructure, right? And then the whole foundation models came along, and the same sort of infrastructure was used for training these large language models. So all of a sudden, it went from being sort of niche to kind of very sort of well-known and popular, and the enabler really behind these large foundation models that we see today. Yeah. So it was really cool to see that.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, so I mean, I do think really the scale mindset is almost gets like a turbo boost with Gen AI. I mean, I think whatever we did to at Workato to make like these processes easier. I mean, now working with unstructured data got so much easier. Doing the knowledge work gets higher quality and easier with less mathematical knowledge needed and so on. I mean, we've even seen, I don't know if we have some process junkies here in the room, but in Workato, you define step by step. What should the process be? We played around with this with OpenAI and said like, hey, let's just define the tasks that need to be done, and then let's actually the model decide which ones have to be done in what order. And we did that first for a security analyst kind of use case, and it was almost frightening how well it did. And it's now getting generalized for all kinds of processes. It's almost like instead of playing, any sport yourself, now you're the coach. You're on the sideline, and you let the AI do the work. And then I guess all you're doing is supervising. From a process perspective, it's quite something. It's quite something. Now let's talk. I mean, if we're getting into all these kind of things that are possible, I think we also got to talk about responsible AI, right? I know you brought that up, Harish. So I'll let you make the thesis here for responsible AI. Maybe also, where to be careful with AI. Maybe where to use it, where not to use it. And then I'm looking on the other side. We got the financial guy here in the room who knows all the regulations and so on. I'm not sure he can give us his part of the story. But Harish, kick it off.
Yeah, sure. So obviously with generative AI, there are a lot of opportunities that we discussed. But then there are also risks, right? There are ethical risks, there are legal risks, there are reputational risks that you got to be careful about. So for example, these foundation models can spit out toxic content, right? So there are, every organization, as we scale, needs to have a responsible AI strategy. And the responsible AI strategy is the way in which you kind of develop and deploy these AI systems to be safe, to be ethical, to be transparent, etc. And, there's a whole process that customers can go and adopt. And technology providers such as AWS and our partners, as well as consulting organizations, have developed responsible AI practices that they can share with customers as well. But foundational element of any sort of a responsible AI strategy is your data. So as we discussed, your data is your differentiator, and you would likely be using data with any foundation model for providing it additional context or what have you. So just to make sure that your data is free of biases, inaccuracies, is critical to making sure that you get good results as you're using your data with these foundation models. So just going back to our earlier point about responsible AI, it's from a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense to reduce and mitigate risks that come with generative AI and all the power of large language models. But also in general, I think it's the right thing to do from a societal perspective. So a recommendation from me would be to kind of look at responsible AI strategies and invest some time and energy to pursue that.
So it seems to me it's a lot about governance. Governance of the data you mentioned. I mean, it all starts with the data. Governance, I think we need a lot more supervision of what AI gives us. I don't think we can just accept everything. But talk to us, Jeff, about governance. I mean, I know that you have software and products and so on for that. Like how does that play into your world?
Yeah, when you think about the Nasdaq brand, one of the core things it stands for is trust. It's incorporated into absolutely everything we do, from running our own markets here in the US, helping our clients run their markets abroad. Everything is built on this foundation of trust. And so that's really a core principle at Nasdaq. We have to make sure we're always keeping top of mind that we can't break the trust with our clients, with our communities, with the end investors. And so as we kind of look at generative AI, of course, we look at all the upside, all the productivity gains for our employees, all the great new features we can roll out with our products. But we also have to do it in a very responsible way. So one of the things we did early last year was establish an AI governance council. It's co-led by our chief technology officer as well as our chief risk officer. And so as you can imagine, that does have the effect of maybe slowing down some of the innovation, but we think also importantly putting up some guardrails to make sure we're being really thoughtful about where we're putting our data, what we're doing to kind of control access to the data, and thinking about the output, especially around generative AI, just to make sure that we've got that mindset around maintaining that trust with our clients and our communities as we're rolling out all these great new innovations. And so I think that was a really important step that we took as a company a year ago, and I think it's something we're going to continue to invest in just to make sure that we are absolutely being certain that we're not going to put anything at risk, especially our brand.
But I can tell you, I mean, look, there's these, everyone talks about the hallucinations, right, of AI. If you, typically that happens when it's a very generic foundation model that just doesn't know enough about the domain that you're asking, and then it starts to, I guess, get overconfident, or just basically doesn't know what it's talking about. I think you can, with the right techniques, you can feeding your own data, this retrieval augmented generation and so on. You can mitigate that, but it's got to need a governance, and the data you feed it needs to be proper and without biases and so on. All right, we've talked a lot here on stage. I'm curious, do we have questions from the audience? Anything? I mean, you guys got like a whole bunch of like accomplished folks in AI and automation and so on the stage here. Anything you want to ask them? I guess I'll give you the mic. How's that?
Hey, thank you, Marcus. My name is Mickey McManus. I'm a senior advisor at BCG. I think I'm kind of curious about these mindsets you talked about, the scale mindset, process mindset, the growth mindset. In particular, what's Workato doing? So maybe this is throwing it back at you instead of interviewing the other folks. What's Workato doing about generative AI and the growth mindset or the scale mindset? In other words, what's happening at this moment that's changing at Workato, or that you're grabbing a hold of to experiment or explore with generative AI, for example?
Mm-hmm. I get put on the spot here now. Gets turned around. No, absolutely. I mean, look, I think we believe it's a really big deal, and it affects a lot of change in many dimensions. I mean, I think we talked here more about business process here today, but I think we all know that for software companies, generative AI is changing a lot. It's changing the game. How you have your teams develop, but then also what your product looks like. So we created 2 co-pilots in Workato, one for creating these connectors to application endpoints, and then another one for basically typing in English language, and it comes up with a process, a definition. That's in the product. We internally, the way we do our own operations, generative AI is, I mean, you gotta have to think about it. Whatever you propose or whatever you do new, however you work on your processes, you have to think about Gen AI. We're big about these kind of hackathons and kind of people getting together and coming up with new ideas. And all the last kind of hackathons, always had Workato and generative AI in there. Probably the RevOps team is probably the team that does the most with it. One of our guys actually was at Meta and gave a big presentation of all the, 10, 15 things we do with generative AI and Workato, like follow-ups from meeting and automatically generated lead campaigns based on CRM data, and the list goes on. We build accelerators on the knowledge management side. We built that accelerator with that new process model with the decisioning engine that's like generative AI powered. So I think we tried to really make it part of the fabric. I think it really deserves that attention. I don't know how you guys, I mean, obviously you, it's your life, Jia, but what do you guys do at Amazon? Are you guys using internally also Gen AI for your own processes and so on?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, we are. It's too broad to just point fingers at anything, but Amazon does have a set of principles, especially for the way the company develops and deploys AI internally, as well as on external products.
And then on the Nasdaq side, I think you said in the product and on the business, right? Both.
That's right. And as you kind of think about the scale mindset, one of the ways to kind of think about that is anytime you have large quantities of data, that's a good opportunity to kind of leverage some of this generative AI technology to do things that you couldn't scale to otherwise. So, for example, one of the products we built on AWS Bedrock was one of the things that's exploded over the last 5 years is companies having to report sustainability data. And a lot of that data is not quantitative, it's qualitative. And so, we'd have armies of analysts helping our clients kind of understand what are their peers or competitors reporting and how does that map into things like regulatory reporting requirements. And so that's been one of the areas where we've actually been able to use both a combination of natural language processing, but the generative AI to go out and scrape all the sustainability reports for all public companies, and then give our clients the ability to then go query that data, kind of understand it much quicker. So it's a way to kind of provide a lot of scale to something that frankly was pretty manual prior to that. So when we kind of think about it, that's one of the ways that we think about the scale mindset.
Completely. I would agree in both development side and business side, generative AI can impact it significantly. If you look at the startup world, the small company world, many of the tiny companies like Midjourney actually, they make even bigger impact than companies that are tons of the size, or 100 times the size that it can achieve, right? So that definitely would shift the innovative startup space. And we leverage generative AI for coding, we leverage generative AI for our own process, etc. at LiveX AI. And on the product and business side, we benefit tremendously as well. I mentioned about SMB in the past. Really, they won't be able to leverage some of the generative AI technology, and they are the mainstream serving our everyday life, right? So having AI tools like generative AI that we are able to build product that can help them to empower them to engage with their customers through the entire customer journey, from when their customers are interested in their product or their service, to how to use their product or their service to customer support, etc., etc. In the past, they will have a big team in their company in order to leverage. In the past, for companies who are developing such a product, they also need a gigantic team to build such a product. Now it's a true democratization, and everybody is benefiting from it.
There's one more.
Yeah, my name is Ray Chang. I'm a consulting partner with Crow LLP. And I have a question for the speakers here. From the scalability mindset, as you scale, that you need to have more governance around it. Do you have any advice as to how we should think about going about setting some guardrails or some governance across different parts of your company? Because the CIO may think a little differently from the CMO as opposed to the chief product officer. So when you're building the Gen AI within the product suite, what should we think about as a framework that we use as a principles for companies across the board? I know every company is unique, but if we can shed some light as to how your company do it, that'd be great.
I'll give one kind of practical example. One of the first things that the the AI Governance Committee established was just some frontline training. I think there is a lot of knowledge out there in the public about generative AI, but I think there's also a lot of misconceptions. And so really trying to level set with your employee base to kind of make sure everybody has a good baseline understanding of what the technology can and can't do, how they should and shouldn't think about sharing data with the different systems that are out there, and then really kind of making sure that there's a regular refresh on that, because it is a very fast-moving space. So I think training and education is going to be a big part of that to make sure that as you have folks who are using these tools and overseeing these tools, they have a really good understanding about the capabilities and some of the risks.
Yeah, and I think the topic of responsible AI and governance obviously has been around for many years now, and I think generative AI and the adoption is that need has gotten amplified. So there are established practices. If you look across other organizations, even Amazon's and Google's and Microsoft, there are established practices that each of these organizations follow. And then there are also frameworks that many other organizations, independent organizations, have come up with as well. And they're pretty comprehensive. So there are different
Thank you all so
things
much
like,
for tuning into today's The New
for example,
Automation Mindset,
having a data
AI
strategy and making sure that you know
integration
your
come
data well,
together.
making sure
If you
that
want to
your
learn
models
more
don't
about the
drift,
key
and
topics
how do
we
you
covered
avoid
in the
them,
show,
what's the
you can
explainability
find
of
them
models.
in the book,
So
The
there
New
are
Automation
many
Mindset
different
by
aspects. I'm happy to share
Avocado
some
CEO
with you as well
Vijay
post.
Also, leave us a
this call.
comment and let us
It's
know
a
what you thought of
comprehensive
today's
sort of,
conversations. And don't forget to
frameworks
subscribe
that have
so
been
you will
developed
never
over
miss
years.
an episode.
And then
I'll see you next time.
large language models and the way they behave has kind of added an additional element to this whole thing, because they are somewhat of black boxes, and you can get like unpredictable outputs and hallucinations, as Marcus mentioned. So that has kind of supercharged the need for additional guardrails as you are using these models. So it's an evolving field, and the research and recommendations keep coming on a regular basis. But starting with existing frameworks is a good idea.
So I mean, I can talk about like before AI happened, right? So Workato was driving that trend in just regular automation to get more people involved. And even there, you need governance, and you need to be responsible about it. I mean, it's a great thing in a company to enable 1,000 people to automate things. But they can also do the wrong things. They access systems, they can break things. So we always had like a tendency to want to involve as many people as possible, so be decentralized, but at the same time recognize that there's going to be some central supervision that's happening. So the standard DevOps processes that you go through production just through a central team, or decentralized is more experiments. All of that, I think, applies. I think when AI comes into the game and you use these AI services, to me, it feels like there's a lot more like a human supervision step that's almost mandatory before you put that out. In fact, I think all the examples I've seen so far at Workato, in customers of Workato, they always had a human supervision step in there. I think it's more if it's a very low complexity, high volume automation, probably a good idea to try to do it without AI. And then you don't have to supervise. If it's a more low volume, higher complexity, get AI involved. You can probably get a lot of business benefit, but you want to have someone just check it.
Totally. I think there is a lot of good principles about responsible AI already. And in addition to the data that is important for ensure inclusive, responsible AI, I believe the evaluation and metrics are very important as well to put those principles into action, right, into practical usage. Think of even in healthcare, right? So a model that is used for medical report generation might care more about the accuracy, the authority, etc. Whereas if you use it for a chatbot, you want it to be super efficient and super concise and has empathy, etc. And how do you do that? Right? You need to teach the model to align with you. And right now, when everybody is using ChatGPT, you are actually teaching it, and many of us are contributing data and our guidance to ChatGPT. And in the corporation or in the practical product development setup, evaluation and metrics really needs to align with your responsible goal and needs to also align with your business goal. So only if you put that into that framework, it can learn and align with you.
All right, do we have, let's say one last question here. Who do we have? Do we have a microphone? And then we're all still together, and we can do more questions over drinks.
I have a question about the disruptiveness, general question about the disruptiveness of AI, machine learning, or reinforcement learning, so on and so forth. So particular to tech, finance, product teams and operations, how do you foresee kind of the workforce being affected by the usage of ML algorithms, et cetera, et cetera? Even with coding, we talked about how bots can be used to enhance and make more efficient human workers, right? But coding itself is also a repetitive and redundant task. So in the next 5 years, like for instance, how do you foresee big cap corporations leveraging AI, and how will that impact the current development teams, product teams, and also analysts working operations with the decision making, since a lot of it is redundant in decision making?
Curious what you guys are thinking. I mean, look, we've when robots came about, I think that made an impact on the workforce. I think now we're having an impact on probably less mechanical hands-on work, but more kind of the thinking kind of work. I talked to a private equity firm that was doing a due diligence process, doing some research, and they were surprised how well a very young intern paired up with ChatGPT without much domain knowledge of the space was actually able to get to crazy good results. I think probably experience probably is valued less in the future, is my sense, because I think these LLMs, they learn faster than we do. Maybe just, I don't know, two sources that I always quote that kind of got me thinking. I mean, so number one, there was a study just recently about doctors compared to large language models. So they let both decide in parallel. The LLMs actually did better, all right, with diagnostics of actual real hospital cases. The other one, I don't know if you've heard that with Go, the game of Go. It's a very complicated game. It took a lot longer to figure it out for the machines than chess, for example. So there was this one experiment where they compared using an LLM. They trained that LLM on, from the last 200 years, all the Go games that were recorded, that people played, all right? So that was one set, and there was another one where they just had two computers play against it. They knew nothing. All they knew were the rules, and they just started playing against each other for a couple months. And then they had these two LLMs, one human trained, one machine to machine trained, compete against each other 100 games. The one where the machines learned from each other won 100 times. You're talking 200 years of playing Go. So it seems like the machines are actually pretty darn good at some of this stuff. It will have to have an impact, I assume, right? I don't know what you guys think.
I think one of my favorite quotes is people are worried that AI is going to take their job. I think it's wrong. I think people who know how to use AI are going to take your job. And so it's going to be kind of the next generation of workers who understand how to leverage the technology. They'll have the advantage. One of my other favorite descriptions is that LLMs are just a calculator for words. And I don't think you'd sit there and expect anybody to do a lot of math without using a numerical calculator. And so, again, I'm generally a technology optimist. I think this all just helps to enhance our productivity and how fast we can accomplish things. And I think you made a great point. Maybe smaller companies benefit a little bit more than that than the big companies. So,
yeah, I'm optimistic too. I always say we are in the age of augmented intelligence because AI is improving and elevating our human capabilities. Think of the doctors; they are the most experienced and well-trained. You know how much they spend on documentation and how much they are spending on digging out the patient information. They should leverage that to spend time with their patients and really trying to treat them. But right now, I mean, in the past, it has been they have been spending a lot of time on all these tedious efforts because of the siloed information. I think generative AI can totally help elevating the effort, and that's just one example.
Yeah, and I concur with their views that in the time frame that you mentioned, I think we are going to see augmentation of productivity and the workforce being more productive thanks to AI. And I think we don't know what the long-term impact of this would be, but I think one constant throughout our history has been human ingenuity. So I'm sure there will be higher value tasks, even higher value than what we are doing today for humans to do and for our AI sort of assistants or co-pilots to kind of help us along the way. So I'm an optimist as well.
But I think, I like Jeff's advice. It's kind of like, I think the one thing you don't want to do is ignore Gen AI. I mean, you want to leverage it to your advantage. And I think if you don't, I think you might end up on the wrong side. Yeah. All right. Well, with this said, first of all, again, thanks for everyone coming out here. I know were more questions. Let's do them over drinks here. But I want to thank the panel for, I think, really stimulating conversation. Hope this was a great start to the new year. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's The New Automation Mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. If you want to learn more about the key topics we've covered in the show, you can find them in the book, The New Automation Mindset by our Workato CEO, Vijay Tella. Also, leave us a comment and let us know what you thought of today's conversations. And don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.